are the fintech trends that may disrupt the industry? Which fintech startups should we keep an eye on? The following video shares the vision of an experienced professional on some of these trends, so that you can better understand how this can impact your business and ultimately take advantage of it.
Fintech, to be very, very simple, it's when technology brings something to finance. And when I say finance, typically we use a broader umbrella. So we can speak about banking, but we can speak about brokers, we can speak about insurers, we can speak about regulators or applying regulation to all the sector. Basically it's using technology as a driver to or create new business models inside the financial world, or to do exact the same business models but using different channels of distribution, or also putting the business model in another place. So I can give specific examples on that, but for example, something very interesting for startups, it's raising capital, and typically you had to pitch to a VC, etc. Nowadays, with startups which are typically categorized as equity crowdfunding startups, startups could go there and raise money from the crowd, so you don't have to go through or in line with the typical previous established systems. You can, through the crowd, through technology, have the same outcome that previously were not possible. So fintech, it's about that, picking technology, using these functionalities to make finance something better, faster, cheaper. So yeah, it's around that. Yeah, the concept of fintech is pretty, so it's celebrated, so it's more famous nowadays, fintech, but it exists for centuries, I would say. Like, there's companies that were previously creating vaults to transport money from one side to the other, like real vaults, physical vaults, and nowadays they are creating ATMs or wallets in the internet, the same company. Example of SWIFT, where it's a network that connects banks to transfer money into other countries. So. And it was created before the internet. Of course, nowadays with it's very systemized, the way of innovating and fundraising, and fortunately through evolutions like the cloud, like blockchain, like the smartphone, you get much more possibility, much more standardized and easier to scale. But the implications are in everyday's life. Think of going abroad and or even inside your country and don't and ATMs, if ATMs didn't exist, or credit cards, or nowadays apps and wallets that make you pay. So I think that's the most typical and the most seen by the masses example. But if you go into another extreme example, which are the grayer ones, so the ones that are more in the back office, nowadays, like with lots of automation on the back office is booking. It's what made, for example, possible to the Portuguese to buy a stock in the US, because before, imagine if it was physical paper or something like that, like buying a stock in the US would be almost impossible, or so expensive that almost none retail investor will be able to pay the commissions. So that's another example. So it's not payments, it's inside the financial markets. And of course there are things very, very interesting. It's not for our daily lives, but imagine in Africa, and there are many, many countries adopting this, but for example Kenya, it's one of the biggest examples through M-Pesa, which is using those Nokia 3310, like, you know, like just texting through a technology called USSD, where you put like star pound 100 pound, and you can transfer money, store money, invest, buy stocks through this technology. So it's very, very interesting for the developed world, but even more interesting for the developing world, where people are very, very unbanked. And that's super important in the sense that, as you know, inflation in those countries are bigger. So basically, if you save money and you don't apply it in, imagine, a deposit or something like that, you're gonna erode your savings. So it's very, very hard to break poverty without banking. So for these countries, fintech is even more important and more impactful. Yeah, so of course we got very, very famous ones like Fidzai. Fidzai is doing so it's using artificial intelligence in detection of fraud, okay, in payments fraud, etc. Got James, which is also using artificial intelligence, but to give credit, consumer credit, and other types of credit. You got Switch Payments, which is creating its one single API, making all payment methods available. So imagine you start selling something online. In Portugal, you need multibank, but you go to Sweden, maybe you need Klarna. You go to Brazil, you need Boleto. You go to China, you need Alipay. And those guys, they got a single API that connects all these types of payment methods. You got Locker, which is managing identity. And when you got finance is a regulated area, so you need to comply with several legislations. One of the most famous ones is the KYC, the Know Your Customer, the anti-money laundering, and those type of things. You really need to know who's putting money there in order to avoid that this guy is money laundering or financing terrorism and things like that. So that's why you really have to know who is the owner of the ultimate owner of a specific bank account. But this is very difficult to coordinate or to compensate the user experience because you get many papers to fill, many documentations. In Locker, it's exactly working on this digital onboarding of customers, and then all the life of the customer. I want to transfer money to you, I can use fingerprint or face recognition or something like that. And they are enabling banks to have that seamless user experience that we already got in our normal apps, unlocking our cell phones, but in the banking experience is still starting. So I think these companies are pretty interesting in Portugal. They are doing a good work. We got a little bit more B2C companies, for example, Cedars doing the equity crowdfunding. You got Raise doing the debt crowdfunding, B2B, so meaning they work with Portuguese SMBs, small and mid-sized businesses. And they help the crowd to concede credit to those type of players. In Europe, you got a very interesting reality, which was the creation of the neobanks, challenger banks. So what are these guys doing? They look at the process of banking and they say, okay, where are the pain points? What are being done wrongly? A little bit what the tech entrepreneurs or in e-commerce marketplaces were doing with other things. Think of Uber. Uber thought, okay, I want to go A to B, and they had taxis, I had things like that, which is typically not so easy. The experience, where is the taxi? Then I don't get the exchange to give to the guys. So they thought of small pain points, and they created what the so-called Uber experience. And these neobanks, which lots of times they don't even have a banking license, they use another bank, and they plug on top of that and create a layer of user experience, a fantastic layer of user experience. Then you got very interesting companies doing just verticals of that. Let's say a company very, very good on transfers, a company very good on giving credit to students, a company very good on doing asset management, so a robo-advisor or something like that, as Wealthfront or Betterment or something like that. So, and then these neobanks, which get a very good user experience and you like to use and it's easy for you to use, such as Revolut, Monzo, Number 26. So you get all those examples that they curate the relation of the customer with these very good vertical focused fintechs. So in the end, I think it's exciting not just looking to one fintech, but clusters of fintechs offering the final offering for the customer. So for the final customer, it's a seamless experience.